It's one of those things where.
Hey everyone, namaste and welcome to this very, very exciting conversation with Yogacharya Dr. Ananda Balyogi Bhavnani. So I was just talking to my mother earlier today and I was saying regardless of whether, who's interested or not, I think I am most excited to have this conversation on this really wonderful topic. So those of you who are here and listening in, please say hi in the comment section. Please enter your questions as well. And let's try and make this as interactive as possible. Now,
So those
for
of you who are here and listening in, please say hi in the comments.
my name is Shailaja Menon, and I have been a yoga practitioner and teacher for over 20 years now. I began my journey in India with integral yoga and continued in Malaysia with my teacher Manoj Kaimal. Along the way, I set up my yoga studio, Mountain Beyond Yoga Studio, where I teach classes regularly. My book Yoga Shakti was published in 2018, and currently I also host a yoga show on Anand TV based in the UK called Yoga Shakti Again. So, as you can see, the yoga practice has shaped my life. Now, I would just like to add that all these conversations are available on both of our FB pages as well as our YouTube channels. So please do check it out there and using this opportunity to ask you all to like and subscribe to it as well. And, Dr. Ananda really needs no introduction. He's been here many, many times and but I would just still like to say that I first came across Dr. Ananda sometime last year during the lockdown, where he has these sessions that he was doing every single day, where he shared so much of yoga knowledge very generously and with an open heart. And I think since then I have been following him regularly. And even today, he continues to share every week, every Saturday morning, he talks. And all of these topics, in fact, are also what I have drawn from those conversations. Now, I'm going to give a very brief introduction, Dr. Ananda. So, he is the director of the Center for Yoga Therapy Education and Research and professor of yoga therapy at the Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth, Pondicherry. He's also chairman of the International Center for Yoga Education and Research at Ananda Ashram, Pondicherry, India, and Yoganjali Natyalayam, the premier institute of yoga, Carnatic music, and Bharatnatyam in Pondicherry. Now he is the son and successor of the internationally acclaimed yoga team, Yoga Maharishi, Dr. Swami Gitananda Giri Guru Maharaj, and Yoga Maji,
So
Sri
he is
Meenakshi Devi Bhavnani. Now, I have cut short a lot of his intro, so I'm just going to go over, what is really important. Like a fellow of the Indian Academy of Yoga, he has authored 19 DVDs and 24 books on yoga, as well as published nearly 300 papers, compilations, and abstract on yoga and yoga research in national and international journals. And he is currently a member of numerous expert committees of the Ministry of Ayush, including its National Board for Promotion of Yoga and Naturopathy, Scientific Advisory Committee, and Standing Finance Committees of CCRY, Technical Committee of the Yoga Certification Board, Expert Committees for Celebration of International Yoga Day, and the Yoga and Diabetes Program. So, in addition to all of this, he's also a classical Indian vocalist, percussionist, music composer, and choreographer of Indian classical dance. So, it is an understatement to say that it is really a great honor, to have you with us. He's extremely busy, so I actually try to space him out and just invite him, every few months or so. So, really, thank you for being here with us. So, I'm going to invite Dr. Ananda to begin this session with a prayer.
Such a pleasure to be back on your show again, Shailaja, and I always enjoy the way you keep the spirit upbeat in every one of these shows, whomsoever is part of it. And it's always an honor to be here and to share with so many people who value all of these thoughts. Let us start by invoking the wonderful spirit of the great gurus, the Guru Parampara, all the grand masters of the lineages who have given us these beautiful teachings. Tad Paramparyaya Vidmahe Jnanalingeshwaraya Dhimahi तन्नो गुरुः प्रचोदयात्। ओम योग महर्षि डॉक्टर स्वामी गीतानंद गिरी गुरु महाराज की जय। Yes, we are ready to take our leap forward today, a topic of great importance, the matrix of karma. So yes, Shailaja, it's all yours.
Yeah, so I just want to say hi to those of you who have come here. A lot of them are great fans of you, Dr. Ananda. There's my Aunt Reena from Singapore who always makes it a point to get your show. There's our good friend Kaustubh who's also there. Hi Kaustubh, looking forward to your questions as usual. There's Padmini and Viji. Nice to see all of you here. I think there's Divya also there. So, wonderful to have all of you here. And please, put in your questions and keep this interactive. There's Acharya Birju also there. Namaste ji. Thank you for tuning in, and my aunt Indira. So, karma is such an important word in the sense that I think across the board, people use the word karma, and is usually used in a very fatalistic kind of manner. It's like it's out of your hands. So that is what is really such an important conversation, because it's really not like that. And so I'm going to allow you to go into it. So let's begin with the meaning of the word karma and its connection with individual choice.
One of the Indian words that has become famous worldwide is karma.
Yes.
And you find it in all dictionaries, you find everybody talking about it. And especially they love to use that term when somebody is having something bad happen to them.
Absolutely.
And they say, he's got his karma and he deserves it. It's sort of this one-upmanship that,
Correct.
he's got his karma. The second time they use it is when they have something happen to them. Most probably they have caused it themselves and they say, oh, it's my karma, what can I do?
Correct.
And I actually have to laugh at this, because what has happened is that just as all these grand Indian terms have been taken out of context, karma has been taken out of context to only mean that negativity that comes back to you and all the struggles and sufferings and bad luck that you have. Whereas karma is everything that comes back to you, not just the bad things,
Bad stuff.
everything. But when it is the good stuff, we are like, I deserve it, I earned it, it's all me, me, me. And then when it's bad, it's like, it's not me, it's my karma. No. Everything that comes back is part and parcel of what you have put out. So we all understand Newton's law. And Newton's law is very simple. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And in physics, we all learn this in school and we know it. Yes, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Yes, hey, the same in metaphysics also. The same in spirituality also. Everything you put out is going to come back to you, whether you like it or not. It's like the law of gravity. The law of gravity is going to be there whether you believe in it or not, whether you like it or not. You cannot say, I am on the 99th floor of a building and I'm going to jump off the building. Because I don't believe in the law of gravity, I'm going to go up straight and not go down. No, you go down and then you go up. Okay, that is how it happens. But people think, oh, I don't believe in it and I don't accept it. You have no choice in that, because it is a universal law. It is part of what is called the Ritu, the universal rhythm. Ritagum Satyam Param Brahma is how the statement is given. It is that rhythm, Ritu. It is the rhythmic law of the universe itself, and there is no escape. So if there's no escape, does it become fatalistic? That is what people have taken it to be. But no, it is empowering. Now here's where the perspective changes. You say, oh my God, you cannot escape it, so it is fatalistic. No, you cannot escape it. Hence, You are being given an opportunity to empower yourself through the power of choice, and the power of choice is the superpower of being human. That is Dr. Ananda's usual punch dialogue. The superpower of being human is the power of choice. Because you have the choice, what are you going to put out? Because you know it's going to come back to you. I like to tell people, imagine you have a choice that, you have to throw something up in the air. Okay? Now you have to throw it up. The problem is whatever you throw up is going to come and fall on your head. Okay? That is the condition. Terms and conditions apply, like insurance policies and bank loans. So terms and conditions apply is that whatever you throw up is going to come back on your head. Now you're given a choice. Do you want to throw up stones? Do you want to throw up rose petals? Do you want to throw up chocolates? Anybody with any brain cells working, and if they're not working, do some Kapalbhati, get the brain cells working. Anybody with any brain cells working who has a thinking cap on will choose the rose petals or maybe chocolate. Nobody will choose the stones because you don't want to have stones fall on you. Now, if you don't want stones to fall on you, don't throw stones out in the first place. If you don't want dirt to fall on you, don't put dirt out in the first place. Put out that which you want to come back to you, which is why another punch dialogue, which has become part of my vocabulary these days, be the person you would love to have in your life. Be the person you would love to have in your life. Because that is what you're putting out, that is what's going to come back. We want to be a nasty person, but we want everybody to be nice to us. Not going to be possible. Universal law says no. What you put out comes back. This is why Jesus, the Christ Master says, love thy neighbor as thyself. Now here neighbor means everybody, not just the person next door to you. It means everybody with whom you interact. Treat them as your own self, which is part and parcel of Indian culture when we say Namaskaram, Namaste, I bow. The divine in me bows to the divine in you, and I put out positive feelings of love, compassion, empathy, support, and then I get it all. That is the most important part. So karma is basically the cycle. It is the cycle of the coming back that which you have thrown out. Think about it as a boomerang. So the boomerang of karma, you throw it out, it's going to come back to you. Better have the skill to know how to throw it out, what to throw out, and when it comes back, have the capacity to accept it. Take a good analysis of it, SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, threat analysis of the karma that has come back. Say, what can I do so that this nonsense doesn't happen again and again and again? How can I change it? And so in that moment, the power of choice changes the whole equation. Was that good?
Very good. So I'm going to go to the next one since we have many questions here, and I'm sure many questions are going to come up as well. I saw Kaustub's question, but we do have a question on karma and dharma later, so we will go there, in a while. So I just wanted to go over the different, again, when we say karma, usually it is just understood as one thing, right? So it's just only always whatever bad happens to you. So I just want to go over the different, types of, karma that are there, and so that we have a broader understanding of it and understand how, like you say, your present moment choices are also part of the karma that we're creating.
Absolutely. Well, here we have to look at two different angles. One angle is an angle that is based on the concept of the fructification of karma. So the fructification of karma, based on that, we have what is known as Sabija karma or Sanchita karma. So it is the seed karma that we are carrying from lifetime to lifetime. It is called Sabija, seed karma, or Sanchita, the past karma being carried. This karma then starts to manifest, flower and manifest in this lifetime, where it is called prarabdha karma. It rubs you the wrong way. Okay, rub. Prarabdha karma. The prarabdha karma is rubbing you, and you are experiencing all that is coming because of the manifestation of karma. Which karma? Sabija or Sanchita karma. Now, this is fine. The third part is every moment we are creating karma, and it is called Kriyamana karma. Kriyamana karma is the karma we are creating every moment that in the next moment now has become Sabija and Sanchita karma. So you have your old bank account balance, now it is being manifest, and you are creating a new bank account balance right now. Very simple. The old account, you have to work it out, make the account balanced by the present moment. Now, if you don't do that, you keep on adding new balance to it, and the karma load starts to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that is what actually people are doing. So it is very important to understand the past karma manifesting in the present, and in the present moment, we are creating more karma. This is based on fructification of karma. The causation of karma, which also goes in line with something which is called tapatraya, the threefold suffering, tapatraya, and the threefold karma. It is said to be Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, and Adhyatmika. Adi Bhautika is based on where we are living on this planet. Bhuloka is this planet. So Adi Bhautika is karma where we are living. The second part is Adi Daivika. That is the supernatural occurrences where lightning strikes you and something happens. It is explained as what would be called an act of God. And even insurance companies try to escape out of that, saying it's an act of God, Adi Daivika karma. But the more important one from my perspective is Adhyatmika karma, the karma that you yourself are creating. What's coming from your own creation? See, we may not have a choice. You are living in Malaysia. I am living here in India. We may or may not have a choice to live in another place. Okay, so we are bound to experience the karma of being in the place where we are geographically, be it natural catastrophes, be it the political messes, be it all sort of issues that happen, COVID going up, COVID going down. This is all part of where we are. Now, we may or may not be able to change it. The second, Adi Daivika. Certain things are out of our control. You cannot explain how it happens. Again, very difficult to change it. But Adhyatmika karma is right in your hands. So for me, the key here in both these distinctions, through Adhyatmika karma, we can start to deal with the karma bank account. And through Kriyamana karma, we can again deal with the karma account. So Kriyamana karma and Adhyatmika karma to me are the windows of opportunity through which, with our consciousness, with our mindfulness, and with our power of choice, we can start to actually do what would be called karmic surgery. You are starting to modify. We talk about genetic engineering, karmic engineering. Adhyatmika and Kriyamana are the tools for that.
So I think that ties in here with my friend Sangeeta from Coimbatore, her question that in the balance sheet, can positive actions take away the effect of past karma?
Absolutely, yes. See, there are two ways you can deal with karma. I often say karma is like a bomb. Okay, so karma is like a bomb. This bomb goes off at the most inappropriate time in your life. Everything is going great, and suddenly the karmic bomb hits you and your life is blown to pieces. Okay, so your whole life is blown to pieces. That is the karmic bomb going off. And this is how most people deal with karma. The karma bomb comes, blasts their life to pieces, and the balance is set right. Now, yoga says you don't have to do it that way. The yogi said, if the bomb has to go off, there's another way. That is called diffusing the bomb. So the bomb being diffused and the bomb going off and blasting your life, in both cases, the karmic balance has been taken care of.
Nullified.
So what you are doing is, you through the power of choice, by developing your skill, that is where yoga comes in. As a philosophy, as a psychology, as a spirituality, as a therapy, as anything you want, as life itself. Yoga is life itself. It is giving you the life tools with which to develop the skill, the consciousness, the mindfulness to diffuse the karmic bomb. How do you diffuse it? By the choices you make in the present moment. In the past, you've done something. Something is coming up. You have the choice to accept responsibility and set it right. Now, if you set it right now, you have nullified karma balance. But most people, instead of setting it right, they keep denying it. Keep blaming somebody else. You blame your parents, you blame society, you blame God, you blame multinationals, you blame anybody you want. And what you are doing is, by blaming somebody else, you are worsening the karmic load. The moment you take responsibility and you say, let me try to diffuse this karmic bomb, presto, you have now started to equalize the balance. So through positive actions, what are positive actions? Positive actions are mindful actions. Positive actions are mindful actions which are in tune with your dharma. We'll come to that later. But when you are fulfilling your dharma, the purpose of your existence, at that point, you start to mitigate karma.
Okay, beautifully said. So I think really the key takeaway is that there is room and scope here for change through our own positive, awareness and action. And it's not completely out of our hands. And through Kriyamana Karma, present moment action, and through the Adhyatmika, also through that awareness, we are able to bring about some, conscious change in our patterns and our future karma accumulation. So just going back a little bit on the comments, there's Balaji who's asked this again is a very common question I hear, right? Like child in the womb or the newborn have this karma marga because, a lot of children are born with birth defects and people are saying that, why does this happen? And, the child is innocent and, the child has never done anything. So I think this is something that is so important to just go into a little bit.
Yeah, see, it is very difficult to understand karma when it's a newborn child. When children are born with congenital defects, it becomes very difficult to understand this because, see, we can understand that in childhood we do something and as an adult we bear the karma of it. It's easier to understand it. Here is a newborn child. Why is that child having to suffer a certain congenital defect? And because of that child suffering, the whole family suffers.
Correct.
The family also
Correct.
suffers. It's not just the child. And the only explanation we have is Sabija karma or Sanchita karma. That is the only explanation. And this is why the Yoga Vashishta, which is the ancient scripture where sage Vashishta is counseling Lord Rama, it talks of what is called Adija Vyadi. And Adija Vyadi are the diseases that are coming from the cause which is higher than the mind itself. It is sort of our connection with the universe from where it is coming. And in that you have two types of disorders. One is called Samanya. The Samanya Adijadi are the normal psychosomatic disorders that we deal with by mantra, aushadhi, etc. That is all the tools that we have. But the Sara Adija Vyadi, that is the essential disorder. The essential psychosomatic disorder is to be born again and again and again and again and again. That is a statement by the Yoga Vashishta. To even be born is a disease. And he says, what is the remedy? What is the antidote to it? The antidote is Atma Jnana. Atma Jnana is the only way you can eradicate the disease of birth, rebirth cycle. And that is why the Guru is given such a place in Indian thought. Atma Jnana Pradhanena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, we say. That Atma Jnana is given by the Guru. So definitely the principles of Indian culture do tell us that the samskaras and the vasanas of previous lifetimes will cause the karmic manifestation in this lifetime that includes different type of diseases and disorders. So yes, the disorders, the diseases do have a relation to karma, but it is not to be another excuse. Oh, what can I do? All my disease is because of karma. No, no, no. Karma is the cause of your disease, yes. But now you can change that disease and its progression by what you do in the present moment. That is where the power of choice comes in. So karma should never be an excuse. What can I do? Because of my past life karma, I'm like this. Well, in the present moment, you can stop being a donkey and become a human being. That is in the present moment. Okay? Simple.
So, does this tie in with Kaustub's question as well? He's written something that, Ayurveda says illness of the present are consequences of the karmas of the past. So,
Absolutely. It is the same thing I was saying. Now, modern medicine doesn't understand this concept. Because karma implies that you have to accept reincarnation theory. If you don't accept reincarnation theory, you will not be able to accept this.
Absolutely.
So, modern medicine doesn't deal with reincarnation and past life regression therapy. So modern medicine will definitely not accept it. But then modern medicine understands genetics, that most of our diseases are genetic based. And so when I talk to my fellow doctors, what I tell them is the genetic disorders are what we call sabija karma in yoga. And then they can understand it. So if you introduce it to modern medical doctors, that sabija karma is the disease pattern, the tendency that is carried in the genetics, what we call as genomics. The modern genomics, basically that is what sabija karma is. Then you have created a link between modern medicine and these traditional concepts. But if you tell them karma is causing your diabetes, they're going to laugh at you because they don't understand that concept. But then if you say, well, the karma theory gives you sabija karma, sanchita karma, that has given you the predisposition to diabetes, and because you didn't in your kriyamana karma make the changes of healthy lifestyle, the prarabdha karma is causing your diabetes. You put it in that term. You find equivalent terms and then you have a conversation rather than antagonistic attitude.
Okay, so the next question actually touches very much on what we've been talking so far about, the ever debated question of, life being either fate or free will. But I just thought we would touch on these two words that are very interesting, just to show how, our present moment actions, affects our sequence. So the importance of shana and krama.
Yeah. See, actually, this comes from the Yoga Sutras of Maharishi Patanjali. He is very, very clear in this because he says, Shana Tat Kramayo. He says, in the pattern of the sequence of the units of time. So if we understand that we have, units of time, they are in a sequence. That is a krama. Krama is a sequence. Shana is a moment in time. So let's call it a unit of time. Okay, that unit could be seconds, milliseconds, years. It could be even lifetimes. So Shana Tat Kramayo. So you have a sequence of units of time, which is the present unit, the past unit, and the future unit. In the present unit, you are experiencing the karma of the past unit, and in the present unit, you are creating that which will become karma in the unit. So if you take this 3-unit aspect of time, it becomes very easy to understand. In the present moment, you are experiencing the consequences of the previous moment, and in the present moment, you are creating the causation of the consequences of the future moment. So in the present moment, both the future and the past are lying there. And it's been very funny during COVID times because we have brought all these Zoom meetings together. And so often in class, I have students who are from North America and students who are from New Zealand with me at the same time. And I'm always laughing at it because in that present moment, we have the past, which is America, which is still catching up with us. And we have the future, which is New Zealand, which is already ahead of us in the time scale. And yet, it is all happening in the present moment. So we are actually starting to experience a metaphysical, philosophical, supernatural concept through Zoom meetings, where some people are already into the next day and some people are still in yesterday. So I am in India today. My friends in America are yesterday. My friends in New Zealand are tomorrow. And it's all in the present moment. And I tell them it's such a marvelous experience where we are reminded in the present moment, you can change the past and create the future. How do you change the past? The past is the conglomeration of memories. The past is a conglomeration of memories, and by adopting the proper perspective in the present moment, you can change the conglomeration of memories of the past and thus create a healthier future. A simple example is a good heartfelt apology. A good heartfelt apology in the present moment can change the past conglomeration of memories and create a healthy future by choosing to make a heartfelt apology in the present moment. I think it is one of the greatest examples of how we can change the past and create the future by what we do in the present moment. The present moment is the biggest opportunity we have been given. And yet, are we aware of it? Are we willing to take cognizance of it? And are we willing to do something about it? Now, the moment I say apology, people say, yes, I said sorry. I'm like, no. That's like, when you find your siblings fighting and tell one of them, go and say sorry to your sister or to your brother, they just go, sorry. That's not an apology, okay? We all have that in all families. Huh? That's not an apology. An apology has three components. The first component is, I am sorry. That's the first component. The second, maybe I was wrong. The second component. So first component, I am sorry. Second component, maybe I was wrong or I am wrong. And the third component is, what can I do to set things right? What can I do to set things right? That is the most important operative part of an apology. And how many people do that? Because that's in the present moment. The operative part where I am sorry, maybe I was wrong, what can I do to change it? And presto, you have become a karmic engineer.
Very well said. So it's really important, this concept of present moment, and it's really interesting to see how it's not just a very modern concept about being present and all of that, but it's really there, come down from
It is the most ancient concept. The most ancient concept on this planet is the present moment, the kshana. Thousands and thousands of years. And then somebody comes along and makes the present moment the now popular, and everybody's like, wow, this is new age spirituality. No, this is old wine in new bottles, old wisdom in plastic cans. That's what I like to call it. The kshana that Patanjali talks about. The present moment is the biggest gift we have.
True. Very beautiful. So the next question goes into our karma and dharma question. So how does our karma affect our dharma? And going back to Kaustub's question earlier, what was he saying? Let's go back a bit.
You see,
karma in relation to dharma. Marma of karma.
Yeah, the marma is the secret. The marma is a term used for a secret. So what is the secret of karma and dharma? See, we need to look at the root of these words. Karma. Kar means to do. Ma is me. So karma actually means my doing. What I am doing is karma. That is why the whole of the karma yoga concept of Bhagavad Gita is based on you doing whatever you are doing without attachment. Because the moment there is no attachment, there is no repercussion. Attachment is what pulls it back to you. Okay, attachment is what pulls it back to you. And I often talk about karma as being like an elastic band, a rubber band around your neck, and you have a stone attached to it. Now you throw the stone away. It doesn't matter what direction you throw, it's going to come back and hit you in the face. Now, why does the stone hit you? Because it is attached to you, or you are attached to the stone. Now, Bhagavad Gita is very clear. Cut the attachment. Nishkama. So, karma should be Nishkama karma. Automatically, then there is no repercussion coming back to you because there is no attachment. So, non-attachment to one's action is actually a very beautiful concept of karma yoga. Karma, my doing. So, when I am doing something, because of what I have done, something comes back to me. We talked about action, reaction, cause, effect. So, karma. Now, let's look at the other word, dharma. Dharma means focus. Okay, dharma means focus. Ma, what is my focus? What is my purpose? What is my responsibility? So, the word dharma implies one's focus, one's purpose, one's responsibility. Now, dharma, when you are living in tune with dharma, you are living your purpose. You are focused on every moment of your life, and whether you are manifesting your purpose, you are taking up responsibility, and automatically when you live in tune with your dharma, you are going to mitigate karma. And this is why I like to say that dharma is the vaccine. Everybody is talking about COVID vaccine. Dharma is the karma vaccine. Okay? Dharma is the karma vaccine, and dharma is the karma antidote. What do I mean there? When you fulfill your dharma, you are preventing karma from manifesting. That is how it is a vaccine. So through living of dharma, you are mitigating karma. So it is a vaccine. By the dharmic living, whatever karma is there, you are working it out. So it is the antidote. So dharma as the vaccine against karma that is yet to come. Heyam dukkham managatam, says Maharishi Patanjali. Prevent those miseries that have not yet come. So very simple. Dharma prevents karma. And if there is karma, how do you deal with the karma that is there? By living your dharma. And hence, when we live the life we are meant to live, a simple example, we are born human. How many of us are living as human beings? We are living like dogs. We are living like animals. We are living like donkeys and monkeys. When we start to live as a human being, what is a human being supposed to have? Manas, consciousness, mindfulness. Someone who can care about others. Somebody who can have empathy for others. Somebody who can understand the other person's suffering and try to help them out of the suffering. This is being human. And that is why for me, a yogi is nothing but a noble human being. Someone who is manifesting the highest level of humanity in their life. And when you live like that, karma just runs away. Karma will say, I have nothing to do with this person. It's like when the sun comes, the light comes, the darkness runs away. When the light of dharma shines in your life, the darkness of karma will run away, because it says, I have no place when dharma is there. I think that is how I would always try to bring these two together. Live your dharma and manage your karma better.
I think your examples are what truly stand out. So this karma bomb, karma vaccine, all of that, I think is really going to stick in people's minds. That's going to be the takeaway from here. So anyway, Sangeeta asks that if our intentions are right but misunderstood by others, how does that affect our karma? Do we need to take action?
Why are you worried about others misunderstanding you? You are judging yourself based on how others perceive you. Now, that is not who you are. You are you. You are not what others perceive you to be. So, if your intentions are pure, do not worry how they are perceived by others. Live your life as the best version of you. We are always caught up with what will somebody think? What will others think? What will the media think? What will my friends think? You ask anybody and they're like, oh my God, what will the neighbors say? What will family say? We have got stuck in living a life that somebody else is perceiving. Live the life that you are to live as a human being. Have your intention and ask yourself the question. Be honest with yourself. Because many people, they go around, my intentions are pure, but the intentions are not pure. Their intentions are guided by the Shatripus, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, and hence they are impure intentions. But they run around with halos, they have these artificial Photoshop halos around their head, running around saying, oh, my intentions are pure. No. Be honest with yourself. But if your intentions are pure, do not care. I'm sorry, but do not care about how others perceive them. You live your life on your terms, not on somebody else's terms. Be compassionate, be understanding, but you do not have to live your life on somebody else's terms. It is your life, not their life.
Okay, so we have many comments coming in here. Kaustup says animals live better than most humans. They are selfless in their
Absolutely.
love. I have to agree with that too. And
because
then
animals are just being themselves. See, I have no problem with a donkey being a donkey. I have no problem with a monkey being a monkey. I have problems with human beings being donkeys and monkeys. That is where you are not living your dharma. A donkey being a donkey is being a perfect dharma. Dharmi is there. They are in tune with the dharma. But if you are human and not living as a human being, not manifesting humanity, you are not fulfilling your dharma and you will be bearing the repercussions of karma because you are not living mindfully. Dharma is mindful living, common sense living, conscious living.
So Acharya Birju Maharaj has also given many comments, but I will just read one. He says something very complimentary about you. He says, you are offering the best a yogi can give to the world. So love your gesture and endeavor. So I guess he believes that you're living your dharma out. Anyway, so we go to the next question. This is...
He actually has given another verse in Sanskrit. Karma ashukla akrishnam yogina triveda mitaresham, which actually says that karma is normally seen as black or white. Okay, the positive, negative, the opposites. But for the yogi, they transcend this. So for the yogi, karma is neither black or white because they have transcended it. How do you transcend karma? By manifesting your dharma. And that is why a yogi is one who is living the dharma as perfectly as they can at the present moment, in the moment which is Shana.
Very well said. The power of the present moment. So this is again a very interesting question and something I am really fascinated by about what drives karma, right? So the samskara vasana complex, that is so interesting. No, it's so interesting for us to, when we do swadhyaya, for us to see our deeper intentions and our triggers and our patterns, right? Otherwise, it's always something from the air that comes, karma, it's just, we don't realize it's our own inner triggers that, create all this. So just for us to delve deeper and understand ourselves better.
Absolutely, the karma is manifesting, but what lies behind the karma? What are the agents of karma? The agents of karma are actually samskara and vasana complex. Samskaras are our conditioned habits, our patterns of conditioning, And this conditioning keeps doing the same thing again and again and again and again and again. And if you do the same thing again and again and again, the same thing is going to happen to you again and again and again. Nothing different is going to happen. So if you do the same thing that has caused you the pain, and you do it again, you're again going to get the pain. And then you say, oh, why am I getting pain? You are doing the same sequence that has caused the pain in the first place. So that is the samskara. Samskara, samaskara, the kara is to do, sama is the same. You are doing the same thing again and again and again and again and again and again, nagging, and the nagging power of samskaras is manifesting. What is behind the samskara? It is called vasana. Vasanas are our tendencies. They are the hidden tendencies, and my father used to call them the vanities. He said what happens is we have something called deha vasana. Deha means the body. These are the body hang-ups, where either we love what we look like or we hate what we look like. Now it depends on which phase of life you are in. I think this body hang-ups, whether it's going to be like or loathe, is based on which phase of life. And whole issues go on, especially with teenage kids, where their nose is either too long or too short. The eyes are either too big or too small. The ears are either too big or too small. You know, my hair is either too black or not black enough. Or, you know, it's just weird. We get locked into body hang-ups that are related to the body. It's a very important vasana. One is the body hang-ups, deha vasana. And both the fact that you like something about you or you don't like something about you is going to create a samskara, and because of that samskara, you are going to create karma. So it doesn't matter whether you like yourself or you don't like yourself, you have created a habit that is causing karma. So deha vasana. The second is loka vasana. I am of this economic or social status. This is the status vasana. I am the professor. I am the big cheese. You know, I am nothing. This I am nothing is also as bad a loka vasana as I am the best. You know, this identification and this being locked up with one's worldly position. And because of that, you start to do many things. Again, you create samskaras. Again, you create karma. The third one, which is the most insidious, it is called jnana vasana or vidya vasana. And this is to do what we think we know. I know so much. I have done a PhD. I have a DSc in yoga. I am not educated at all. I haven't gone to school. I am 10th standard pass. Don't you know I have double MA? Don't you know I studied in Oxford? I just studied in a village school. What do I know? All of this is this vidya vasana, jnana vasana, and the big cheeses who run around the world thinking they know it all. Because of that, you create samskara and karma. That is why Tamil Mudati Avvai, she reminds us, Kattradu kaimannalavu, kalladadu ulagalavu, Kattradu kaimannalavu, kalladadu ulagalavu. What we know is in a hand fist. What we don't know is the whole universe. To have the humility of understanding that we are always a learner. We are always in the process of learning. That is what we need to imbibe. Thinking that I don't know anything, so I'm an idiot, is also jnana vasana. Thinking I know it all. I often have people who come to me, I know everything in yoga. I'm like, wow, great. You know, I have finally met my guru. I know everything in yoga. And then you say, what do you know? And they don't even know the name of the asana they are practicing, and or the pranayama they're doing, or who taught them. If you don't even know the name of your own teacher and you say you know everything in yoga, what can I do about you? Other people, I know everything about Yoga Sutra. I have completed Yoga Sutra. I will explain. I'm like, oh my God, huh? Imagine that arrogant ignorance that thinks, you have read the Yoga Sutras once and so you know it all. I know everything. I know all the asana. I know the Yoga Sutra. Bhagavad Gita, it's at my fingertips. I'm like, oh my God, seriously? You guys have reduced those teachings to pages. You have reduced them to just the page on which they are printed, forgetting that these teachings of yoga are living, immortal teachings. Living, immortal teachings, which means they are constantly growing. As you go deeper and deeper into them, they grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And such a beautiful lesson is there. But what do? I know it all. Huh? I have done 200-hour teachers training. I'm a yoga teacher. So I don't need to learn anything more. Imagine the type of jnana vasana, deha vasana that comes. Often we say it's called Shastra Jala. Jala means a web. Shastra is all the scriptures. And you have people who can recite all the scriptures from top to bottom and bottom to top, but they don't live even one line of those scriptures. Just imagine that. Then what's the use of memorizing the Bhagavad Gita if it doesn't make you a better human being? What is the purpose of knowing the whole Quran, the whole Bible, the whole Yoga Sutra, the Yoga Vashishta, the Hatha Pradipika, or whatever book it is? If it doesn't make you a better human being, then what have you been doing? Wasting your time. You should have been reading newspapers instead. At least you would have been up to date on, world affairs. This is all this Jnana Vasana. So these Vasanas, they are the very hidden, they are the behind the scene guys. Then the samskaras are the ones that keep the wheels going. So the wheels are the samskara, and then it manifests as the external cycle of karma. So if you want to deal with karma, you have to go deep within yourself. Atma Vichara, questioning the self, self-inquiry. Swadhyaya is the key to going deep into yourself, finding those samskara vasanas pattern and eradicating them through tapas, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana, the kriya yoga of Maharishi Patanjali. Through the kriya yoga, tapa, disciplined effort, constant effort, swadhyaya, introspection, and ishvara pranidhana, giving over to the divine after you have done your best. Do your best, leave the rest. That is where you start to deal with it.
Very beautifully said. So many questions here. Shobana wants to ask you, how do I get the clue of my life purpose?
Sit quietly, go deep into yourself, and ask yourself, what are those moments in life where you feel the most you? What are those moments in life where you feel connected to yourself the most? What are the moments in life where you feel at ease, where you
I think there's some internet issue. Hopefully, doctor will come back. So many interesting messages coming from the side. Many interesting questions as well. Just wait for Dr. Ananda to come back.
I don't know what happened there. I think the internet gods were not happy with what I was saying.
So I think it's a very important points that you were making. So I would request you to go over it again, because I think a lot of people have this thing about how do I mean, it really, I think, eats into you, what is my life purpose?
Absolutely.
So it's a huge search for many people. So please go over it again.
Yeah. You see, when we are talking about life purpose, I think we need to understand that when we are living our life purpose, we are going to feel a sense of sukham, inner ease. And this is why it is very important that we question ourselves. We have to question ourselves. It's a very, very important aspect of questioning ourselves at different moments of our life. Which are the moments where we felt connected to self? Where did we feel a sense of being at ease with ourselves as opposed to the dichotomy? Because most of us are living a dichotomous life. Because we have a certain education, we think that is our life purpose. And so we are stuck in a job doing something which we don't feel connected with. Now, that is definitely not living your life purpose. So, it is important to ask yourself the question, when do you feel the most you? And this is a question I've asked myself a lot. And over the years, I realized I am the best me when I'm teaching. I am the best me when I'm teaching. I am at the most comfortable sense of sukham when I'm teaching. And I realize that my life purpose is teaching. And through that, as I start teaching, as I start sharing, I am fulfilling my life purpose and I have a sense of sukham. Now, if I am put in the bank and asked to balance the balance sheets of accounts, I am not going to be at ease with myself because it's not my life purpose. So I think here the key is ask yourself the question, introspect deeply. What are the things that when you do, you feel at ease with yourself? Start questioning yourself. This is a very important key to it. In the tradition that I follow, the Swami Gitananda Giri's Gitananda tradition, Rishi culture, Ashtanga Yoga, we have a system called Yantra. I recently have conducted 2 courses on that. And that enables us actually to understand where we are in life, and the karma and the dharma components of life become a bit more understandable. So that is a tool that we use. But it is not necessary everybody has to sign up for my classes. That's not the purpose of this. Ask yourself the question. Atma Vichara, self-inquiry is the most important.
And we have Mr. Soundarajan saying that, Dr. Sir, please address practical difficulties of living Karma Yoga in everyday life in modern times where work are connected with money.
Yes, it's a very good question, Soundarajan. The question that I would ask a person here is, are you doing what you are doing because you are paid for it? Or are you doing it because you love doing it? So if you love what you are doing and you happen to be paid for it, that is the perfect equation you can have. You love what you are doing and you can get paid for it. It is called ikigai in Japanese. The Japanese have a concept, ikigai, that is similar to dharma. And it's sort of, what are you good at? Can it pay your bills? Will it help others? If all these pieces come together, it's going to be good. Because what is happening is everybody wants to do something because they get something. So I always ask people the question, are you doing it because of what you will get, or are you doing it for the sake of doing it? Now, if you do whatever you do for the sake of doing it, then Karma Yoga is manifesting in your life. If you do what you do because of what you will get from it, it is not definitely working on Karma Yoga principle. It is Sakamya, not Nishkamya. And that if we do what we are doing for the sake of doing, we are going to be blessed by the universe. And then whatever comes back, we accept it as Ishvara Pranidhana, as Bhagavan Ka Kripa, as Guru Kripa, as the blessings of the divine. So I would say that the best way to deal with it in day-to-day life is do your best, leave the rest. That is the very simple punch dialogue to work with Karma Yoga and day-to-day life. Because just do your best and leave the rest. Because if you have expectation, you are bound to have problems. As simple as that. Expectation leads to disappointment.
So we have a question from Kaustubh here about what is burst karma, whether it's a teacher who has studied all the text but does not imbibe the teachings, or a teacher who has half-baked knowledge and guides many students incorrectly.
I think both. Both are bad. Basically, what is important is when we teach people, we have to make sure that we are well equipped to teach. I think it is very important. See, if you are going to teach somebody atomic physics, you should have learned atomic physics properly. Otherwise, trying to teach somebody atomic physics without you knowing atomic physics is going to definitely be a very, very bad karma being put out into the universal matrix. And this is why we have the two extremes, because the extremes are always going to create negativity. The middle path is where we need to go. Now, at the same time, having said this, the power of intention, I come back to it again. And the power of intention, where somebody may not know it all, but when the intention is pure, that they actually, through that pure act, are not creating karma. So this is actually true. And the best example of this is Kannappan Nayanar. Kannappan was the forest dweller, didn't know how to do puja, how to worship Shiva. He brought water in his mouth and spit it on the lingam. Hair, he had the flowers, put it out of the hair into the lingam, killed a deer and offered it to Shiva. Now, definitely, that is totally wrong in all the way you are supposed to do puja for Shiva. 100% wrong. Yet, Kannappan gets the darshan of Shiva, not that well-educated Pandit who comes and does the puja perfectly, because the person who was well-educated and doing it was doing it just for the sake of, this is what I have been trained to do, I'm doing it. There was no purity of intention. Hence, it is very important that even if you are not knowing it completely, I think the universe, because for me, the universe is a benevolent mother. The universe is a benevolent mother. If your intention is pure, the universe will bless you. And Kaustubh, I'm sorry, but Kannappan didn't teach thousands. He has taught millions by his example. The best teacher is the one who teaches by example, not by the words or the books or the lessons. The best teacher is the one who teaches by example. And that is why Kannappan has taught millions and millions that the power of pure intention is what the divine wants in Ishvara Pranidhana, which is the peak of Bhakti Yoga itself. When you think of when you think of Mirabai, Surdas, when you think of Andal takes the garland and puts it on Vishnu. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to wear the garland before you put it on the divine. Yet she becomes one with the divine. And that is why these are people who have given us examples of what it is to be human, how to transcend humanity into your own divinity. And by living their purpose, such people have manifested the highest dharma and eradicated karma, and hence they had moksha. As long as karma is there, moksha is not there. They eradicated the karma. How? Through that pure bhakti. Bhakti yoga is an amazing part of yoga, much neglected, much neglected. Bhakti yoga is the capacity to see the divine in everything and everything in the divine. Not saying that stone is divine, but not this stone. Not you are divine, but not me. Or, yes, Shailaja, you are divine, but nobody else is divine. No. Can you see divinity in everything? And can you see everything in the divine? That is the peak of Bhakti Yoga. And automatically what happens? Your karma is eradicated and presto, moksha.
Very, very beautiful examples, Dr. Ananda. Very well said. And like you said, Kannappan, Andal, all of them continue to teach us, even right to this second with you quoting these examples. So I thank you for sharing all that. It's truly beautiful. Ultimately, it's really the purity of heart that allows us to transcend all of this. And there's my cousin Lakshmi from Singapore who says, when the choice is between being truthful to a friend or being sensitive to her feelings, how would you interpret the good karma?
Actually, I don't think there's any difference there. See, if you are truly sensitive to your friend, you will want her to know the truth so that she can bring about change in her life. We often think that by speaking the truth, we are going to hurt the other person's feelings. Now, what is very important is Satyam Vada. It is said that speak the truth, but Priyam Vada. So speak the truth in a pleasant manner. So basically, how to speak the unpleasant truth in a pleasant manner so that the person can then transform their life. I think that is the power of choice you need to use when dealing with your friend. So the power of choice you have there, how can I let her know the truth in a pleasant way so that she can change, transform herself, the situation can become better, and yet at the same time not have himsa or violence in it. When Maharishi Patanjali talks about Yama Niyama, we have to understand the yamas are not exclusive. Many people think, oh, I'm going to be truthful and I'm going to tell you all the bad things about you, even if it kills you. No, 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 no. That is not truthfulness. That is violence. See, it has to be truthful, but at the same time, violence cannot be there. And this is why we need to expand our consciousness. There are so many people who think that they are speaking the truth, and what they are actually doing is being violent to others. They are being violent in the name of truth. And they say, oh, I am just speaking the truth. If you got hurt, what can I do about it? No, that is you being insensitive monster. You are not to be an insensitive monster. You are to be a sensitive, thinking, mindful, loving human being, which means you need to take how you can express that truth in a non-violent, loving manner in such a way that it will transform the other person. That is where you become human, and the superpower of being human, the power of choice, manifests through you, and you can put on a cape and fly around in the sky if you want.
Yeah, very beautifully said. So it's true that even in the yamas, the first yama is ahimsa. So I guess everything that follows has to have that quality of ahimsa to it. And anyway, the questions are not ending, that our time has already finished.
I would
So
just like to address
yeah,
Mr.
you can address whatever you want.
Mr. Ramanathan's question on how ego affects the karma. Ego is one of the biggest causation factors of karma, because the ego is very much linked to what we call the Shatripus. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. These Shatripus, they are all based on the ego. And the ego is always going to think that I am right. And this is why the ego of the villain thinks they are the hero. The ego of the villain thinks they are the hero and justifies everything. Hence, it is very important to take the ego out of the equation. That is where the concept of Shraddha, faith, the conviction in something higher, and the capacity for Ishvara Pranidhana, which is the surrender to the divine will, surrender to the universe, and acceptance of the bigger picture. And at that moment, you realize, I am not the big cheese. The universe is there. I am only a small drop of the big ocean. And in that moment, suddenly the Shatripus, they lose the power over us. The samskaras and vasanas, they recede. And suddenly our dharma shines bright. And karma starts to move out of the equation. And at that point, we start to walk that beautiful path, the path of the self, to the self, through the self. That is the path of yoga, the path of life itself.
Okay, I think this is a classic, wonderful ending. So I'm not going to say anything more. I'm just going to allow Dr. Ananda to please do a chant for us to end up this session. Yeah.
I would like to end with a small bhajan, which is to the Guru. And the reason I'm talking of the Guru is because the Guru is the one who has to shed light on our darkness. The Guru is the manifestation of the divine. Urveshamapi Guruhu Kalenana Vachedat is how Maharishi Patanjali describes Ishvara. And so I thought I'll end with this bhajan actually today.
Absolutely.
Guru Mahima, Guru Mahima, Apara Mahima, Guru Mahima, Guru Mahima, Guru Mahima, Apara Mahima, Guru Mahima, Kim Vachaniyam, Guru Mahima, किं वचनीयं गुरुमहिमा किं वचनीयं गुरुमहिमा किं वचनीयं गुरुमहिमा 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 अपार महिमा गुरुमहिमा 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 अपार महिमा गुरुमहिमा अज्ञाननाशक गुरुमहिमा विज्ञानदायकं गुरुमहिमा अज्ञाननाशकं गुरुमहिमा विज्ञानदायकं गुरुमहिमा 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 अपार महिमा गुरुमहिमा 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 अपार महिमा गुरुमहिमा अपार महिमा गुरुमहिमा अपार महिमा गुरुमहिमा 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 ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ॐ
Thank you so very much, Dr. Ananda. Each session is really beautiful and enlightening. So I'm sure all the viewers will agree as well. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Without you, there is no conversation. So many of you are regulars and show up every time we have these conversations. So thank you so much. And yes, I will keep these conversations going for the simple reason that I enjoy them the most. And I consider it an absolute privilege to have this opportunity to, have these really meaningful conversations with, such great yogis of our time. And I will keep it going as long as possible. And thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you so much. Dhanyavadaha.